Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Lights Too Bright podcast. We are back again. For those of you who are not liking, sharing, and following, please do. Just helps with my numbers, really. Today, we have a friend, another colleague, who I think for the podcast is a first in terms of what they do and how they do it. I've known this guest, I'd say probably for about 10 years now, and our paths have crossed predominantly on the lecture circuit because I kind of end up in venues where he's lecturing. He has a big interest in clogs, not clogs, crocs even.
hmm Yeah.
And that is always quite entertaining. So for those of you who know him, you will know him. I'd like to say hello to Philip Morgan. Hello, mate. How are you?
Okay. I'm good. Yeah. Thanks for letting me do this.
No, thanks for taking the time. I do say it. I say it to everyone. It does take time. You got to and I really appreciate you making the time for me. As we've discussed, you know what the pod is about. So I know you, Phil, and people within the industry, I think, know you. You're pretty well known worldwide, really. But for those who may not know you, what is your current role? What do you do?
Yeah. So it's a good question. My day job is I'm an academic at the University of Manchester. I'm head of optometry at the university. And my sort of formal academic role is a professor of optometry. I've been in Manchester for absolutely ages. I went to UMIST to do my PhD. I studied first at the University of Bradford. My first year, then went to UMIST to work with Nathan Ephron and his new founded contact lens research group then. That was 1990. And we're recording this in 2026. So I've been at the university in all sorts of different roles, doing all sorts of different things now for almost 36 years.
And I mean, that's amazing. You're looking very good, mate. Yeah, you don't look like you've been doing this for
Well,
that long.
I'll tell you a funny story. It's a funny thing to say to people. They'll say, oh, how long have you worked here? I was like, 36 years. And it's a long old time. My recollection is when I was like between 10, 12, 15 years, I sort of got the sense, oh, yeah, you've put in a good shift here, pal, good job, well done. And then when you get to 30 plus, it's more of what's wrong with you? Well, how come you have come this long? And of course, my argument is I've sort of, in a sense, been stood in the same place for a long time, but like many of us, the world has changed around us. So I've ostensibly been in the same institution, but it's a very big place and gives lots of opportunities to do lots of things. So I've done a lot of things over that time, and indeed a lot of things external to the university. As an academic, there's an expectation we get involved with outside stuff. So maybe that's what's changed for me, despite my longevity in my current employer.
I think, and that's, I'm glad that you mentioned that because I would do want to touch upon that when, as we go through your journey about the other stuff you've done you know, there's obviously been things that have kept you interested, right? To be particularly within one institution for that amount of time, but we'll get there. Did you always want to be an optometrist? Was that the life goal?
Well, yeah, I think so. As long as I can really remember, and I was at secondary school, I was into the sciences. I was quite good at that. Actually, probably what was very influential to me is that my sister Sue is blind. She's a year younger than me. She's blind, and I guess growing up, perhaps I had a slight affinity or maybe thought about sight and vision more than average, maybe. So maybe I thought about that a lot. I got a chance when I was 16 to do a week's work experience at a local practice. So I grew up in the Northeast. So I was born in Newcastle and raised in Whitley Bay on the coast. And I got a chance to work for a week with Jan Corrido, very well-known practice in Newcastle, which sadly, actually, Jan died a year or two ago, which is very sad. But he was in partnership with John Davidson, our colleague John Davidson in the Northeast for a long time. So I got a week's work experience with him. And I thought, this is pretty good. I could see myself doing this job. And then, that was all I applied for. I wasn't interested in applying for anything else. And I got into University of Bradford. Yeah, at the age of 17, actually. I went when I was 17, so I was a bit young
Doesn't
for my
doesn't surprise
cohort.
me, mate. That doesn't surprise me at all. And enjoyed uni, had fun. Did you kind of like? Did you have a plan? Was it like because
No
for
plan, no plan, no plan
yeah,
really. I just knew optometry was interesting. I could see a career out of it. It was pretty obvious what the career path would be, and I've always been very grateful for that. I happened to be in the same year group as my now wife, Sarah. Many people know Sarah, so we were in the same year at Bradford. So I met Sarah within, well, basically day one when we were there. So and the rest of that is history. But no, really enjoyed the course. We were a small group of about 30 people, very, very collegiate, a very friendly group. We did a lot of things together, obviously inside the course, but also outside, having fun, doing trips and going out and having meals. And that was fantastic. And did my pre-reg back in the northeast in Newcastle in Eldon Square, working for Boots. And yeah, that's when I had a big decision to make. Really, I suppose on reflection, perhaps the biggest decision I had to make was what was that to do? Was that stay in practice, or was I to do something else?
and and what did you decide, mate? I mean that I know where you are now in hindsight. So, well, it looks like
Yeah, so
you
I
chose
think
academia, but
I had a sense. I was always interested in science and things like that, I had a distinct sense as we got towards the end of the 3-year degree. I was a bit disappointing. Is that it? Is that all is that all I'm going
yeah,
to sort of formally learn, if you like? Now, of course, this was a little bit before the days of CPD, and perhaps things are a bit different now. But at that point, I was disappointed. I thought, no, I want to learn more. And I thought maybe there was a few people at Bradford, Dave Elliott, Dave Whitaker, who were there when I was an undergraduate. They were there doing their PhDs, and I thought, what's all this about? That seems interesting. And at about this time, so we're now in 1989, I was having a chat with my now father-in-law, who was and is an optometrist also, and he'd been to see a young Australian lecturer and researcher doing a UK tour. This was Nathan Ephron.
okay,
Nathan had just been offered the job as a professor at then UMIST. He was at the time based in Melbourne, but he let it be known on this lecture tour that he was doing for one of the contact lens companies. I forget which one. That he'd got this new job in Manchester. He was going to be coming to Manchester in the next few months to set up a new research group, and he was on the lookout for postgraduate students. So yeah, this message got through to me. Probably my father-in-law had a secret motive of that if he could get me to take a job in Manchester, that would also probably bring his daughter back home, which turned out to be true. So it was a good move on Mike's part, perhaps. But yeah, I wrote to Nathan. I remember to this day having to follow up my letter with a phone call, absolutely terrified, ringing him up. Had a bit somewhere here in my office at home. I've still got my notes that I wrote about what I was going to say. So I called him, and yeah, so he gave me a position as his first PhD student in Manchester. So yeah, that was a big call really. I had to make. Never looked back really from that. It was the best decision I think I've ever made. But yeah, then spent 4 years working with Nathan doing my PhD, and then he gave me a proper job after I'd finished that, and we worked together full time for a further 12 years from that point. So we worked, I'll say hand in hand, not
yeah.
exactly literally true, but we worked very closely for the next 16 years when he then returned to Australia. But even though that's now 20 years ago, I had an email from him today, right? We still
Yeah.
we're still working, we're still writing, we're still publishing and talking about stuff. So yeah, he's been my lifelong mentor, friend, supervisor, and all the rest of it.
I mean, that's amazing because when you're in the industry and you know Nathan's name, for for all the things that he's done, particularly within contact lenses, and your name, and within the profession, we are a friendly bunch, and it was the point that you made where you were, I had to write him a letter, and then I had to call him, and I was a bit nervous, and what I've found through my years of doing this is that our optometry colleagues are, for the most part, pretty nice to each other. So I remember I've emailed you on occasion. I've gone, Phil, this is coming up, and I need some help. I need some guidance. Would you be able to like point me in the right direction? Yeah, and and that was earlier when I didn't really know you. We hadn't really crossed paths that often. And you were kind enough to go, look, Claire, you've got this, and this. Have a look at this, without totally doing my homework for me, pointing me in the direction of what I needed to know. And I think for a lot of our listeners, followers, there is that. It's if you want to ask someone a question, most people in our profession will quite happily answer it. They won't necessarily do your homework for you, but they will answer it, and they're happy to answer it because we are a nice bunch, and you do make lifelong friends
Yeah, no,
within the
I
industry.
think you're absolutely right. I see this actually in a university context as well, but, in our university, we're a very small program. We account for about 0.5% of all the students at the University of Manchester, so that shows you our kind of relative size. But also, I think more broadly, we're quite a small profession, and I think a lot of the time we do feel it's kind of us against the world. Predecessors had to battle very hard to get us the recognition and the rights and the privileges that we have now. They've had to fight very hard, and I think we can't afford to be squabbling internally within the profession when there are bigger battles to fight externally. And I think for that and maybe other reasons, we are, I think, a very, very supportive and positive community. I mean, Nathan taught me something very important from the start, and that was he would always go out his way to help anybody, whether I mean, of course, his immediate team, he'd want to support them and his immediate colleagues, but externally, he was always very generous with things like, sharing slides and sending information. And he made a big point, I remember, with me early on that, this will come back, at some point, not that you do it for this reason, but at some point you'll help somebody and years later, maybe you'll bump into them and it'll be great, and they'll be helping you later on. And I think that's your point's a good one. Yeah, we're a small group and we need to support each other. And I think by and large, that's exactly what we're like.
So you went straight into your PhD? So did you ever, apart from pre-reg, did you even do a pre-reg, or did you go literally
Yeah, no, no,
jump straight into?
yes, I did my pre-reg,
Oh yeah.
famously failed my routine eye exam because I did the whole thing in the dark.
Okay.
I forgot to turn the light on, which amuses everybody to this day. It wasn't totally in the dark; it was just a dimly lit general light, and I basically failed because I didn't turn on my cubicle light. Anyway, I did my pre-reg, and then for the next 4 years, I worked whilst I was doing my PhD to basically fund myself through it. I worked Saturdays and the occasional week through the year, this kind of thing. So I guess I worked a total of about 5 years on and off, mainly part time. But at one point in 1995, I got the position to apply for the role as manager of Nathan's research group, which is still going, which I now direct, called Eurolens Research. And I applied for this job as manager. And at that point, I got a sufficient bump in salary that I could stop working Saturdays and I wasn't going to be worse off. The last day I did in real practice was, I guess, then what was that, 31 years ago. Now, I'm still registered. I still occasionally see patients in our research clinic a little bit, and I still know one end of a slit lamp from another, I think. But yeah, that was my last day in real practice, if you like. Optometry takes many forms, so I'm still an optometrist and in my own way practicing optometry, but not in the sort of conventional way that we'd normally think of it.
And that's really the point of this pod, was to get that point across. Was you can have an optometry degree, but you don't necessarily have to be working for an institution that involves retail or even within a hospital setting. There are quite a few opportunities out there beyond that. So your optometry degree doesn't confine you to being a provider of spectacles or even ocular health. You can step beyond that. So do you miss seeing patients, or are you is there anything about seeing patients that you miss?
I think I'd probably be better now. I think I probably, my wife Sarah would tell you I'm a bit more comfortable looking at a spreadsheet than talking to a patient. That's probably true. I think I'd be a bit more relaxed now about those sort of patient interactions. So, do I miss it? I mean, I think I could quite happily do it all again. I don't sit day to day and worry about that. What am I missing? I got lots of other things to do that I really really enjoy. So, um, I don't particularly pine for it. I think it did what it needed for me at the time, and it's a brilliant career for those people who choose that option. I just sort of chose something else.
For those, I mean, so I think your route into PhD when you did it, and when I spoke to Nick Rumney about how he ended up being in Australia doing a master's, it's probably really different now. So just for the audience, if someone was interested in a PhD postgrad type thing, how would they go about it now? Would they reach out to someone and say, look, do you have any positions, or are there
Yeah,
more?
yep, yeah. I get regular emails from people saying just that. I mean, more on a more practical basis. Or a website, if you go to jobs.ac.uk or phdjobs.com, it shows you all the positions available in the UK, and not just optometry, but all disciplines. But that's how people can find out about it. Usually it's a question of money. I mean, we like to make sure our PhD students, receive a reasonable stipend. So we need to have funding for them to do that, which we try and win through either one of the government research councils, or in my case, or people working in my area, and perhaps through industry. Occasionally, people will self-fund. That's a little bit unusual. It's a fairly expensive thing to do. More commonly is people who come to us from overseas who have won government funding from their home country, and they're able to come and work with us. So at any, yeah, that's the route into doing a PhD. But yeah, one way certainly to, if you are aware of somebody you'd like to work with, then drop that person an email and hassle them for a bit and see what's going on. I've certainly once or twice been, if you like, hassled into offering
Yeah.
a PhD when I've really liked the look of somebody. I've gone about trying to find money and support, and that.
I had really interesting conversation with Sonia uh, Hoate Trave,
Yeah.
from Aston, and she made this really nice point. She was like, she goes, I don't think I was probably, and I paraphrase so far. I hope I don't get this too wrong. She was like, I probably was not the smartest, which scares me because she is really smart. So God knows what the other people in her class were like. She goes, but I was really curious. And
Mm.
she went, because I was curious, like the PhD aspect really worked for her because she wanted to keep learning. It's a bit like what you said, you finished your degree, you went, is that it? Is there
Yeah,
not
yeah.
more I can
And a PhD is not about being super smart. I mean, I think you have to have a certain, academic capability, I suppose, but it's much, much more about being curious, being driven, and being organized. It's an apprenticeship in how to do research. You're learning how to do research, and you are not closely supervised. You are left to some extent to your own devices to sort things out. I mean, the way that I supervise my PhD students, I meet formally with them once every 2 weeks, and I expect them to come in and tell me what they've done in the last 2 weeks, discuss any issues, tell me what you're going to do in the next 2 weeks. I give a view on that, and then off they go. And it's not my job to make sure they pass. It's my job to give them the framework in which they can function and operate and succeed. It's not my job to do their job. And so there is a lot expected in terms of organization and time management, motivation, and that sort of. That's much more important actually than being sort of the smartest person in the year group. So yeah,
no, God, I was going to say, I mean, that was when she said that was really news to me because I hear about PhDs and I kind of, every once in a while, I toy with the idea of, would I want to do it? And then it's like, well, am I smart enough? And when she said that, and it was the first time I'd heard it because it's the first time I'd really asked, she went, you have to be organized and you have to, they expect you to work on your own. You are doing your work. No one is going to sit there and say, it's not like being at school. This is your homework. This is your due date. And it's self-organization, self-drive and curiosity. So I found that fascinating. So you mentioned that No, go
I
on.
was
You're about to say
gonna
something.
say,
I cut you off.
it is, it is. Yeah, I don't know if anybody is to watch who might be considering. I think a lot of people who've chosen my sort of career path would say it's the best time of your life because you get 4 years where you can essentially, for the first time in your life, you're calling the shots largely. Until that point, even in your pre-reg year or working in practice, a lot is organized for you largely. I used to think when I used to work in practice during my PhD, I used to find it so easy really because I would rock up at 9 o'clock and somehow somebody else had organized a patient to appear in front of me. And I just had to, do the examination. And then at 9:30, remarkably, somebody else appeared. Because in my PhD life, I had to organize and sort out everything. I was doing a clinical PhD. I was seeing and examining patients and subjects, but I had to find them. I had to book them in. I had to tell them where to park. Everything. But it is an opportunity to really find out a lot about yourself. I mean, can start to sound a bit pretentious, but I think you do find a lot about yourself, what you like doing, and what drives you a little bit. And really, then you hit another fork in the road about, do I want to continue doing this stuff, or maybe no, I've had enough now. I've had enough of the sort of learning. I'd like now to have a more maybe structured and more regular job or business career or whatever else. Yeah.
So as you move through CCLRU, is that the appropriate? Have I got that right? No, that's someone else. Your Euro lens, and I'm getting it totally wrong.
Yes,
Yeah,
you're confusing. CCLIU was one of the the original name for the research group in Sydney, Australia.
yeah.
Okay, you're getting
Sorry.
confused with that.
Yeah, all you research groups. Sorry. So as you worked your way up through Eurolens, was that just a kind of learning as you went along, or
Yeah, yeah, a
was
lot of
there?
learning. A lot of learning. The funding that we got that helped me get my first role there was we got some money from Nathan won some money from Allergan, so we did some projects for them, clinical projects, and I was in charge. So I had to liaise with the company. I had to work out how to write a clinical protocol, work out how to get ethics approval, see the subjects, collect the data, do the statistical analysis on the data, write the report. I had to do everything myself. But I learned a tremendous a lot. I mean, bits of that I'd picked up in earlier years, perhaps, but I had to learn a lot. And most importantly, at that time, try and understand working with industry and what industry needs and how that world operates. And so that was a fantastic grounding at that time. And essentially, I've been doing that sort of thing now for 30 years. And I guess I still don't fully understand everything about how industry works. I've never worked in industry myself, but I've spent a huge amount of time talking to people in industry, visiting people in industry. And yeah, so for a university researcher, I think I've got a pretty good appreciation of how things work out in the real world and how industry functions, or I hope I do. Yeah.
How does that then? So would you then say that that helps impact the way you direct the course, the optometry course, because you do have such a good relationship with industry, and you understand what they're looking for. Does it does it
Well,
influence how the students are kind
yes,
of taught?
that's obviously another part of my current role because I've been essentially, although the job title has varied a bit, but essentially I've been head of optometry for 16 years with perhaps a 2-year gap in the middle of that. So, of course, one of my major responsibilities then is to run the various teaching programs that we operate, both at undergraduate and postgraduate level, in addition to my own research and running our research group and having my own PhD students. But I think that, and this would be common, I think, with a lot of optometry academics, that they have, a lot of them will still work in practice for a part of the week, perhaps. And even if they're not doing that, they are somewhat exposed to the outside world, people like myself, which is mainly through industry, perhaps. But I think that does help and influence how our course operates. And I think a lot of optometry courses in the UK, have a lot of sort of common sense about them in how we are in touch with the world of work and what is going to be required for our students. Partly that's because how we're regulated. The GOC requires us to produce students who are fit for purpose for the world of work. But in addition to that, I think a lot of us have some familiarity with with what's required. So yes, I do like to think that my sort of research that I've done and the connections that I have positively influenced my approach to organizing the course that we have, which I'm very proud.
How did you get into the so I understand how you got into the PhD side. So when did you kind of step into the university side, right? Because I'm seeing it as you went to work for with Nathan, did your PhD. At what point did I know there's obviously some element of educational stuff that you have to do, or do you not
Yeah,
have
no,
did you not
that's
have to do
that's
that?
that's right. So even through my PhD, I would earn some money by small amount of teaching, and then as the years rolled on, I would take on more teaching, perhaps less of the practical stuff, more of the sort of theoretical, academic, or research evidence stuff. And so those two things for me pretty much ran in parallel. By the time I got to 2006, about 20 years ago, took, if you like, a sideways move from a full-time manager of a research group, and by 2006, I got a job, applied for, and got a job on the sort of, if you like, the proper academic staff, and I became a senior lecturer. I still, with all my research responsibilities, but I was more formally involved with running much of the contact lens teaching, and that I've still maintained to this day. Yeah, the way as they should, universities work by a lot of people with more research background, bringing that information into teaching, sharing it with students. I like to think that a lot of the stuff that I teach is stuff that we've done in our research group. So I can really speak from the heart about. I'm not reading stuff out of a textbook and telling them we have this experience. We've generated over a long period. Me and my colleagues, we have generated a lot of the information that is now what you teach about, and that's of course very, very rewarding to be able to have information and research that has sort of matured and has gained acceptance, and then you can present as, if you like, the best facts that we have at the moment. So yeah, so basically the research and the teaching ran in parallel.
That I I always find it amazing because I mean I've seen you lecture and you sit there and you've seen me lecture and our styles are obviously very different. But dude, you just know it. It's just you and Linda, you just kind of sit there and just talking, and just you're like, we did this and we did that because you were involved in some of it, but your depth of knowledge is great. And I just like I'm just sitting there looking at notes all the time, and
Well,
you guys
yeah,
just are
yeah,
so good at delivery.
I've done it for a long time, but but I think this would happen to anybody who's, I don't know, in their 50s and has done worked in one area of work all their life. That essentially, I'm just waffling on about stuff that I've done over that period. There's no sort of magic to it, but I think it is particularly exciting when it's something that you've had the opportunity to do and to data to generate, and you can get out there and talk about it. It's fantastic. And I've just been so lucky over the years in getting the support and the funding from industry, from the contact lens industry, working on projects of mutual interest, stuff that's good for them and stuff that's good for me as an academic and for my research team colleagues.
So contact lenses is really your thing, right? I guess again for those who've never met you or heard you talk, you are very much contact lenses. But beyond that, is there anything else that you kind of really you'd like to look into in terms of contact lens or not even not contact lens?
So yeah, dead right. So just about all of my publications, and remember, as an academic, we live by our publications. It's what we're measured on. Very much in the contact lens space or something very nearby. But I mean, within that comes with many, many facets. Contact lenses, I think, are such a brilliant science, if you like, of contact lenses, trying to work out how to best put a piece of plastic to sit on the most sensitive part of the body, is, I think, an incredible combination of material science, immunology, optics, different sorts of biology, probably engineering, manufacturing. I mean, it's all there. If you think about what we're trying to do with the contact lens, it's almost impossible to achieve because you have to have this piece of perfectly made plastic that's completely transparent, essentially inert to the health of the ocular surface, creates sort of a minimal local immune response or inflammatory response. Can be a device that has to be made for a few pennies to be, essentially to be affordable, to be thrown away on every day, for example. So it's such an incredible challenge. You don't, okay, it's just contact lenses if you like, but I think within that there's some really interesting things that can be done. Everything from trying to understand how an existing product works to trying to understand why is it that the eye responds in the way that it does to a contact lens. Because fundamentally, the market is still relatively small. We might have 150 million, maybe 200 million wearers worldwide. That's a tiny fraction of the number of people who require vision correction. It's probably 5% of the people worldwide who need vision correction use contact lenses. So the potential is enormous, but we still don't have the perfect contact lens. We used to work on a concept in Manchester called the invisible contact lens, And it didn't mean that the lens was literally invisible, but it was invisible to the biological systems of the ocular surface. The eye did not know that it was there. And I felt and still feel if we can develop a product like that it would be remarkably successful. But it's not the case. We know that a lot of people, for example, do experience a modest degree of end of day discomfort, for example, with even the best soft lens that, eye knows that it's there. If you look, if you look with, look very carefully for an immune response of the ocular surface by, for example, trying to visualize inflammatory cells or looking for inflammatory proteins, biomarkers in the tear film, or sampling cells at the ocular surface and looking what's there. In all of those cases, when a contact lens is worn, the response is different than when a contact lens is not worn. So even though we might have a patient wearing a contact lens, you might wear one yourself and you really sort of can't feel it. A lot of the systems of the ocular surface are upregulated. The eye knows that it's there. The eye is thinking, hello, what's happening here? And just moves to a increased state of readiness in case anything goes a little bit wrong. It's a foreign body after all. So trying to understand all that and improve all that, I think will lead ultimately to products that are much, much better accepted and are worn by, not by a couple 100 million people, but maybe an order of magnitude more than that. I think it's possible.
So you got work to do. So it's not like you're going to run out of uh, things to look for
Loads to do.
within that sphere. I mean, that's actually a really nice place to. I don't know. What else do you do, Mel? I feel that you do more than that. Does that make sense? I know
Well,
that because
that's
I
just
see you.
my internal stuff.
Yeah.
So externally, I've been absolutely had the delight of being involved with the two major international groups in our field of contact lens. So I've been involved I've been a member of something called the International Society for Contact Lens Research for 33 years at this point, but I've been on the leadership there for about 20 years. I was its president for 2 years. And that is an incredible group of the 100 leading academic researchers in the field, meeting every 2 years for a 1 week meeting and just talking and talking about contact lens basic science and clinical science and trying to see what the issues are and what do we need to do next. An absolutely amazing group. That's been an absolute thrill to be with them. And that was scary. When I went to my first sort of executive meetings there, around the table was, Brian Holden, Des Font, Debbie Sweeney, people I'd just grown up, a generation ahead of me or 2 generations ahead of me, these incredible names in our field. And I had the opportunity when I was relatively young to see them operate. And that's something else that's amazing to see, isn't it? When you get the chance to look at how your peers and superiors and mentors function, not just in the sort of work that they do, but actually just almost how they operate, how they work a room, how they organize a meeting, how they address each other and talk. And just to see all that was amazing. So that's been a huge privilege. And then for many, many years as well, I've been involved with IACL, the International Association of Contact Lens Educators. So the first group was a research thing. IACL is an education thing. I've started recently my second stint as president of IACL. We operate 4-year terms. So I guess I've been president for about 5 years now. And we try and support our educator colleagues around the world in running courses and developing materials and resources. We've got a fantastic worldwide team doing that. I'm just kind of the guy at the top trying to sort of point people vaguely in the right direction, but there's an incredible amount of momentum, incredible amount of support from industry, and really, it kind of runs itself. And I just try and come up with a few ideas here and there. That takes up quite a bit of my time involved with that. We're doing a lot of work in the minute in Japan. We're excited in opportunities there because the education situation for contact lenses in Japan is rather unusual compared with what we would recognize, Kate. So, yeah, a lot of outside facing stuff. And yeah, you will have seen me, we bump into each other at conferences. I spend half my life on a plane going to a conference here, there, and everywhere and talking about what we're doing, meeting people, catching up, having a lot of fun. So yeah, on the road a lot. Just so fortunate, really.
I was very honored. A few years back, Hayekal asked me to do a talk. And that the point where you made with you're kind of sitting there with your peers and you just, you know, watching them function. When Ayakor asked me to talk, I was like, what am I going to teach? What am I going to teach people who I normally go to watch? And it was quite fun because I had to deliver it in a way that I don't think they saw it because there were a lot of academics and they were still within academia. It's
Mm.
like, right, how do we actually do it in real world with the information that you guys are generating? How do we turn that around? And that I felt that was quite a challenge.
Yeah, well, but isn't
So
that,
that
isn't
was
that a
nice.
beautiful model for us? Really, of course, none of us can be perfect at everything or experienced at everything. So we need these settings where we can bring together the kind of research types and the educators and the clinicians and the people doing it and seeing the real patients and sharing their views and their expertise as well. So, something like a session or a meeting like that it's kind of the perfect meeting because nobody can do everything. And I love to be involved with things like that. I can't share. I don't know. I don't, I'm not putting contact lenses on eyes very much. I don't, can't share too much about that, but my role, I guess, is to do something different and to talk about some of the sort of underpinning science and evidence and what I think we know about the challenges that we face trying to make a successful contact lens.
And I think that's a nice point to end there, mate. I mean, we 40 minutes. I knew we would crack 30, as I said earlier. So as with all of my guests, I would ask, um, so what piece of advice I think because you are a head of a department, right? I'm going to ask it to you slightly different. What advice do you kind of give your first year optometry students, right? Like on their first day? Do you have kind of like this nugget that you like to share with them?
Yeah. Yeah, and to a new student, absolutely. My message is get involved with everything. Take every opportunity that comes about. There's lots of opportunities on any undergraduate course, I think, certainly in optometry. Who wants to be the student rep for the BCLA? Who wants to be the student rep for the AOP or some other organization? Who wants to volunteer to be a student ambassador for the university and help with open days? Just do it all. Just do it all because you won't get the chance again. And it's not just about that. It's not really about, being the student rep for the BCLA per se. It's about the chance you'll get to go to have a meeting with other students from other institutions and meet presumably the council from the BCLA, get to go and help at the conference every couple of years. Yeah, so I say that to students, but I also say that sort of thing to others as well. A quick story, actually, Kay, perhaps as we come to a close,
Go
but
for it, man. No, go for it.
wait, it relates to this. In about 2003, I was scheduled to go to Mallorca for one of my first meetings with the ISCLR, the International Society for the Contact Lens Research. I was just a relatively young member at that point. Sarah and I, we'd actually been out shopping. It was a Saturday. We got in at 5 o'clock in the evening. And this will date the story because as we opened the front door, the phone was ringing, right? So do you remember when the phone was
Yeah.
attached to a wall? So we weren't expecting a call, and I picked up the phone, right? And it was Debbie Sweeney, right? Debbie Sweeney, this doyen and the master of contact lens research somehow got my phone number and was ringing me. I'd never really spoken to her directly before. She was just too senior. She was already at this conference in Mallorca. They'd arrived a day or two earlier, and it turns out they were having a bit of a shuffle of some of the leadership roles, and somebody had put my name forward. Maybe Phil could be the new secretary. It was a surprising decision because I was much, much younger than the other people on the executive team, and I was absolutely gobsmacked. I didn't know what to do. So I said, Debbie, we were due to fly out the next day to join the meeting. I said, just let me think about it for half an hour, put the phone down, talk with Sarah, and I just thought, I'm it's obviously too much for me. It's obviously way too senior for somebody in my position. I can't sit with Holden and Sweeney and Fon and Efron and these others around such a table. But I thought, I'm never going to get the chance again. I might never get asked again. So phoned her, I said, yeah, I'll do it. And really, in that sense, I never really looked back. Of course, I learned a lot. I probably wasn't great at the early meetings or whatever, but I kind of bodged my way through it. And so the other message, which is similar to the student one, is just basically say yes. If you get a chance, all right, maybe there's the odd thing that is just horrendous decision, but basically just say yes, because you might never get asked again. Absolutely true in a university context, but I think true in a lot of careers as well. So basically, yeah, say yes and just try everything.
And just a slight caveat to that is I think if someone asks you, they think you can do it, even if even if you're not 100% sure you can do it. And that really helps. If they think, you know what, we think that Phil, Kea, whoever can deliver this, even if you're not 100% about it, someone's got confidence in you. So give it a go.
Yeah,
Give it a go.
yeah.
And that is a great place to end. And I want to thank you again, Phil, for taking the time. Say hello to Sarah, and I will email her as well because I really should get Sarah on because I know she's got some good stories
Yeah,
about professional development and stuff also.
she can dish the dirt and tell you if everything I've said is true or not.
I'll send her the link to this first and goes, look, Sarah, have a listen
Yeah,
to
yeah,
this.
good idea, good idea.
And if you want to come back, come on the show. So have a lovely evening. Will you be at 100%? Will we cross paths?
Yes, I am going 100% optical, yeah.
Okay. Fantastic. Thanks a lot, mate. And I will see you soon.
Thanks,
Take care.
Kev. Cheers.